Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to go on a bit of a trip today, starting with something you've probably played before, a game of tug of war. And we're going to scale all the way up to satellites orbiting the Earth. And the one thing that connects them all? It's a fundamental concept in physics called net force. So let's dive in. Right, let's start with this classic question. Who actually wins in a game of tug of war? You know, it's not just about who's pulling the hardest, right? It's about who pulls harder than the other team. The winner is the team that overcomes the other side's pull. And that simple idea, that overall result of competing forces, that's the perfect entry point for thinking about net force.
All right, so let's make it official. Let's really break down this idea of net force and figure out what physicists are actually talking about when they use that term.
So here it is. The net force is the vector sum of all the forces on an object. Now, vector sum sounds complicated, but all it really means is that you have to pay attention to both the strength and the direction of every single push and pull. You basically add up all those forces, and the result is one single equivalent force that tells you what's really going to happen to that object. That's your net force. And the basic math here is super intuitive. I mean, it's pretty much what you'd expect. If you've got forces pulling in opposite directions, just like in our tug of war, the net force is just the difference between them. And of course, the object moves in the direction of whichever force is stronger. But if the forces are pulling in the same direction, well, they're helping each other out. You just add them together, and that's the direction things are going to go. Simple, right? Okay, so we've got the basics down. Now let's see net force in action with a classic physics problem, one that honestly trips up a lot of people. I want you to picture a roller coaster car right at the very bottom of a big vertical loop. This is a great example because you have two very clear, very real forces going on. First, you've got gravity, which is always pulling the car straight down. Then you have the normal force, which is the track itself physically pushing up on the car, holding it. So what's the net force here? And this is where things get confusing for a lot of us. We've all heard about centripetal force, right? The thing that keeps objects moving in a circle. So the question is, do we need to add that in as a third separate force? Is it gravity versus the normal force versus the centripetal force? And the answer is a huge no. And there's this fantastic explanation on Stack Exchange that just clears it up perfectly with this one line. Centripetal force describes a force. It does not name a force. That right there is the key. So think of centripetal as a job description, not a name. It's not a fundamental force of nature like gravity is. It's simply the name we give to the net force when that net force just so happens to be pointing toward the center of a circle, which is what causes that circular motion in the first place. It's the result of the other real forces. Okay, so let's just walk through the logic here step by step. First, you sum up the real forces. In our roller coaster example, that's the upward normal force minus the downward force of gravity. That gives us our net force. Second, we remember Newton's second law. Net force equals mass times acceleration. Third, for anything moving in a circle, we know its acceleration towards the center is v squared over r. So finally, we just put it all together. The sum of the real forces is the net force, and that net force is what provides a centripetal acceleration. It's not a separate thing. Okay, that roller coaster example is great, but it's pretty neat and tidy. Let's scale this whole problem up and see how these exact same ideas are used in some really advanced engineering. Yeah, figuring out the forces on a simple, single object like a roller coaster car, that's one thing. But what about something like this? How on earth do you analyze the motion of a complex satellite that has all these moving parts, like a boom that extends out and then pulls back in? Well, now you're in a field called multi-body dynamics, and let me tell you, things get complicated fast. And this is a huge challenge for engineers. See, the first step is always to write out the equations that describe how everything moves. But the more interconnected parts you add, the number of equations just explodes. And more equations, well, that means it takes way longer to run computer simulations. And the more calculations a computer has to do, the more likely it is that tiny little errors start to build up and give you the wrong answer. So that brings us to some really fascinating research. We're going to look at a paper that tackles this exact problem. You can think of it as a quest for the most efficient way to do these physics calculations. And the researchers behind this paper, well, they nail the problem right on the head. They say that when you're trying to simulate these systems, two things are absolutely critical: avoiding those calculation errors and just reducing the raw amount of time it takes to get an answer. It's a race for both speed and accuracy.
So the goal becomes, how do you find the absolute bare minimum number of equations you need to solve to perfectly describe how that whole system moves? Not one extra equation. It's all about mathematical elegance and just pure, raw efficiency.
And you can really see what that looks like in this comparison from the paper. You've got older, established methods like Lagrange or Keynes, and they do a good job of reducing the number of equations. But look at their proposed method. It gets the number down even further, to what they prove is the absolute minimum possible for certain kinds of systems. That is a real breakthrough.
So what does that kind of efficiency actually mean in the real world? Well, the paper mentions a related method that used these simplifying principles, and it turned out to be a staggering 90% faster than what people were using before. That's not a small improvement. That is a massive leap forward. So, okay, we've gone all the way from a roller coaster to some pretty advanced mathematics. Let's pull it all back together and talk about why any of this actually matters. So what does this kind of research really give us? Well, it gives us new tricks to simplify all that messy math. It leads to simulation methods that are way faster and more accurate than what we had before. And in the end, it pushes the boundaries of efficiency, getting us to that theoretical minimum number of equations we need. This is literally how engineering and physics move forward.
And here's the beautiful takeaway from all of this. It doesn't matter if you're designing a theme park ride to be safe or a satellite to be perfectly controlled. The core principle is exactly the same. It all comes down to mastering the calculation of net force. It is the absolute key to predicting and controlling how things move, no matter how simple or complex they seem. So, from a simple kid's game to a satellite in orbit, we can see how this deep understanding of net force is what drives real innovation. And that just leaves us with a really fascinating question. What's the next frontier of complex motion that we're going to master by applying this one fundamental principle?